Hi guys. Tonight we begin by stepping onto the damp, mist-shrouded banks of the River Thames, with the silhouettes of 1,000 chimneys cutting into a sky the colour of cooled ashes. The gas lamps are just being lit along the embankment, casting shaky pools of gold on the black water, and you can almost hear the distant low groan of the city, a sound like a sleeping giant turning over. It's the kind of scene that looks majestic in a painted engraving, all progress and grandeur. But if you actually had to live here, especially in the year 1860 at the height of its power, you would likely reconsider before the first full day was done. The reality is stark. London was a machine, and if you had to sleep inside it, breathe its air, work in its bowels, or navigate its vast invisible rules, you'd soon discover your greatest challenge wasn't the occasional danger or discomfort. It was the sheer grinding weight of everyday life in the heart of an empire. You probably won't survive this, at least not with your modern sensibilities intact. So before you settle in, if you're enjoying this journey into the past, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Only if you truly appreciate these deep dives into history. And as you're listening right now, feel free to drop your location and local time in the comments below. I always find it fascinating to see where in the world you're joining me from. Now, let the sounds of your own space fade away. The fog is thickening, the river is flowing, and London, in all its glorious, grim and relentless reality, is waiting. The Thames moves with a heavy, knowing rhythm in the hour before dawn. Its water, the colour of lead and chilled by the autumn night, slides past the stone foundations of a sleeping city. To the west, the great silhouette of the Houses of Parliament rises against a sky that is just beginning to bleed from black into a deep, bruised purple. The clock face of Big Ben is a pale, ghostly orb, its hands invisible from this distance, holding time in suspense. This is London in the year 1860, the heart of an empire upon which the sun, it is said, never sets. But here, in this quiet moment, the sun has yet to commit itself, and the city lies in a state of profound and uneven rest. Listen closely. Beneath the eternal whisper of the river, the city breathes. It is a ragged, two-toned breath. From the solid, dark masses of houses in Mayfair and Belgravia, the breath is steady and slow, muffled by thick curtains and deep carpets. It is the sound of security, of coal embers banked in marble hearths, of slumber uninterrupted by want. But from the east, from across the commercial crush of the city and into the labyrinth of lanes beyond, the breath is different. It is a chorus of shorter, shallower pulls. It rasps with the residue of yesterday's labour, hitches with the cough that never quite leaves the chest, murmurs with the faint distress of dreams haunted by tomorrow's uncertainty. Two different kinds of sleep, two different bodies sharing the same damp island air. Today, you will not just walk through London, you will move through both of these bodies. You will feel the polished marble and the rough cobble, inhale the scent of beeswax and the stench of offal, hear the crystal clink of fine glass and the dull clang of the factory bell. This is the true, complete anatomy of power. So, wherever you are, settle in. Let the light in your own space grow dim. Allow the sounds of your present world to soften and recede. Feel the weight of your own modern comforts, and then gently set them aside. We are stepping back, not as spectators, but as inhabitants. You will wake not to an alarm, but to the distant waking growl of the greatest city on earth. You will not observe its history. You will live a single, ordinary, extraordinary day within it. Breathe in, breathe out. The darkness by the river is thinning. Somewhere a match is struck. A kettle is placed on a hob. A million minds are beginning the slow drift from dreams to duty. The pulse of the empire is quickening. One city, two bodies. Your day in 1860 is about to begin. Your awakening in the West is not a surrender to sunlight, but a submission to a schedule. A soft, persistent knock sounds against the bedroom door, a rhythm more reliable than any dawn. The darkness around you is already retreating, not from the window, but from the gentle, hissing embrace of the gas mantle on the wall. Its light is a warm yellow halo, pushing back the shadows to the corners of the room, making the patterned wallpaper seem to shift and deepen. It is a manufactured dawn, contained and controlled. You lie still for a moment, feeling the profound silence of the house press in, a silence thick and expensive. The bed beneath you is a landscape of softness, a feather mattress that accepts the shape of your body without resistance. The sheets are cool, smooth Egyptian cotton, and the weight of the blankets is a comforting anchor. Heavy velvet curtains, drawn last night with a final decisive pull, seal the room from the world outside. No sound of the early streets penetrates here, no chill of the autumn air, only the faint dry perfume of warmth from the fireplace grate, where the last coals of last night's fire sleep beneath a blanket of grey ash, still holding a memory of heat. The door opens without a sound, and a maid enters, her steps muffled by the large turkey rug. She carries no candle, the gaslight is enough. She moves to the washstand and you hear the quiet clink of porcelain as she pours water from a flowered jug into a matching basin. The water is not cold, it has been warmed downstairs. This small luxury is the first true sensation of the day. You rise, your feet finding slippers placed precisely, and move to the ritual of washing. The soap is hard-milled, faintly scented with sandalwood. The towel is rough, absorbent linen. You scrub your face, and the act feels less about cleanliness and more about transition, about shedding the idle skin of the night. Next comes the shave. You sit before the mirrored stand, its surface slightly imperfect, throwing back a soft-edged version of your face. The straight razor is fetched from its case, its edge tested on a leather strop with a swift whispering sound that is both promise and threat. The brush works the soap into a thick lather in a scalloped bowl. The scent is sharper now, medicinal. The blade's path across your skin is a careful negotiation, a familiar risk performed in quiet concentration. Each stroke is a quiet scrape, followed by the soft tap of the razor against the basin's rim. This is a man's private liturgy, a daily reaffirmation of order and control. Now, the building of the day's persona, layer by layer. The linen shirt first, stiff with starch, its collar a crisp band against the neck. Then the braces, the trousers of fine wool, the waistcoat with its precise row of buttons, each one an opportunity for a small focused task. The frock coat follows, its fabric dense, its cut restricting the shoulders just so, dictating posture. Every garment has a weight, a texture, a purpose. The pocket watch is retrieved from its bed on the nightstand, wound and secured in its designated place. The tie is knotted, a complex manoeuvre performed by feel in the mirror. You're not merely getting dressed, you're assembling a statement, a walking ledger of your position. The clothes do not allow you to forget who you're supposed to be for the next 16 hours. As you complete this silent construction, the house begins to murmur around you. From deep below, through the floorboards and the layers of carpet, comes the faint percussive rhythm of the kitchen, the closing of an iron oven door, the rattle of a pan. The smells ascend slowly, taking the back stairs, the rich, fatty promise of frying bacon, the dark bitterness of coffee being ground. Another scent arrives more directly, carried on the air from the hallway, the sharp chemical tang of ink from the freshly delivered Times, folded neatly on a salver downstairs. It mingles with the ever-present polished smell of the house itself, the lemon oil and beeswax rubbed into every mahogany surface, a scent of preservation and displayed wealth. You give your cuffs a final, unconscious tug and glance at the window, where a thin line of true morning light now glows defiantly around the fortress of the curtains. The world outside exists, but it can wait. Here, in this ordered, perfumed silence, the day has begun on your terms. You are prepared, contained, and presented. The empire of the household is in perfect order, and you are its sovereign, ready to step out and claim your share of the larger one. You move towards the door, the wool of your coat whispering its own quiet announcement, and descend to breakfast, leaving the manufactured dusk of your bedroom behind. Your awakening in the east is a slow, reluctant surfacing from depths of exhaustion. No one knocks. Consciousness returns through a series of intrusions, the deep, marrow-chilling damp that has seeped through the walls all night and now clings to your blanket. The persistent, wet cough of a neighbour through the thin partition, a sound as regular as a faulty clock. Then, faint but unmistakable, carried on the still dark air across miles of rooftops, the first long, low wail of a factory steam whistle. It is not a call, but a summons, a vibration felt in the chest before it is heard by the ears. The day does not invite you, it claims you. The room is a pocket of shared breath and shadow. You might be in an attic, the ceiling sloping sharply to a grimy window that shows a sliver of soot-blackened sky. Or perhaps you're in a basement, where the light, when it comes, filters down, grey and reluctant. The space is not defined by walls, but by the presence of other bodies, siblings, parents, perhaps a lodger crammed onto a second makeshift pallet on the floor. The bed, if it can be called that, is a stew of limbs and coarse blankets. The air is thick, a permanent broth cooked from the smell of old mortar, the sour tang of mouldering plaster, the acrid bite of coal smoke that never dissipates, and the dense, close odour of too many people sleeping, sweating, dreaming in one unaired space. Movement is careful, a negotiation in the dark. There is no gas mantle here, no struck match until absolutely necessary. Clothes are found by touch, the rough greasy wool of trousers stiff from yesterday's labour, a patched shirt that carries the cold damp of the room within its fibres. Every garment is a record of wear, patches layered upon patches, the original fabric a forgotten memory. Dressing is not a ceremony, it is the swift assumption of a protective shell. You splash your face with water from a shared jug on the landing. It is shockingly cold, a sharp slap that scours the last grit of sleep away, but offers no refreshment, only a cleaving to the grim reality of the hour. Food is a thought, not a meal. A heel of yesterday's bread, hard and tasteless, chewed slowly while standing. A swallow of weak, cold tea from a cracked mug if you're fortunate. It is less about sustenance and more about the habit of putting something in the stomach, a buffer against the long, hollow hours until the next chance to eat. There is no lingering. The room is already stirring into a muted chaos of quiet urgings and fumbling searches. The collective focus is on the door. You open it and the city rushes in. The hallway is darker than the room, a narrow tunnel of peeling paint and the smell of boiled cabbage and stale urine. Down the unsteady stairs, your hand skimming the wall for guidance, and then you are out. The alley greets you like a cold, wet embrace. The sky is a dirty ribbon of dull grey far above, between the jagged rooftops. The ground underfoot is a thick paste of mud and other, less identifiable things, churned by countless footsteps. The air is colder here, moving, carrying with it the smoke of 1,000 early breakfast fires and the faint metallic hint of the river. You are not the first. The narrow channel of the lane is already a slow-moving stream of shadowy figures. A costermonger pushes his barrow with a wheel that squeaks like a trapped animal. A hunched woman, shawl pulled tight, moves with a basket of mussels on her hip. Men in cloth caps and stained jackets walk with their heads down, their faces blank with the resignation of the unrewarded. There are few words. A grunted greeting, a muttered curse at the puddle underfoot. This is not a community awakening together, but a population being dispensed one by one from its holding cells into the great machinery of the day. You fall into step, the rhythm of your walk synchronizing with the others not out of camaraderie, but out of the sheer physics of the confined space. You move east, towards the source of the whistle's cry, leaving the close sleeping breath of the house behind for the vast hungry breath of the factories. The darkness is softening from black to grey, but here, in these canyons of brick and want, true morning feels like a rumour, a thing that happens somewhere else. The city begins its daily transfusion. In the west, your transition from private chamber to public sphere is a measured, insulated affair. A carriage waits at the curb, its dark lacquer gleaming dully in the morning mist. Whether it bears your family crest or is a hired growler, its function is the same. A mobile room of leather and polished wood, a capsule of preserved dignity. The door is shut behind you by a silent attendant, and the world is suddenly framed by a small damp pane of glass. The clop of the horse's hooves on the macadam is rhythmic, hypnotic, a sound that distances you from the street itself. Through this moving window you observe the city's awakening servants. The crossing sweepers are already at their posts, brushing the night's detritus from the paths of gentlemen yet to appear. The milkmaids make their deliveries, their yokes swaying with heavy pails. Uniformed postmen stride with purpose, their satchels fat with the correspondence of commerce and society. Shop boys are taking down shutters with a clatter that is muffled by your cabin. The streets are filling, but with a kind of orderly chaos. Hansoms and omnibuses jostle for position, their drivers calling out. Pedestrians navigate the tidal flow of traffic with practiced ease. There is noise, certainly, the aggregate rumble of wheels, the calls of vendors, the snorts of horses, but inside your carriage it is all subdued, turned into a panorama of industrious life. You're a spectator, moving through but not truly touching the mechanism. The scent of the outside, damp horse, coal smoke, the faint sweet decay of autumn leaves swept into piles, only occasionally breaches your compartment, quickly overcome by the smells of leather and the faint floral hint of the cologne on your handkerchief. Meanwhile, your other self is absorbed into the city's sinew and muscle, becoming part of the mechanism itself. There is no carriage, no pane of glass. There is only the press of bodies and the unyielding solidity of the ground. You walk, because walking is the tax levied on poverty. You're not alone. From every narrow lane and dim courtyard, figures stream outward, merging into a broader current that flows towards the industrial heart. This is not a street in the West End sense. It is a canyon of soot-blackened brick, the air already thickening with a haze of coal dust that catches in the throat and leaves a gritty taste on the tongue. Your attention is forced downward. The cobblestones are uneven, slick with a permanent dampness, and patches of something slippery you choose not to identify. Your boots, soles worn thin, transmit every pebble's contour. The sound here is not the clean clop of a single horse, but the ceaseless shuffling drag of hundreds of worn leather soles on stone, punctuated by the rumble of a distant dray cart. Conversations are short, functional, often lost in the general murmur. Some walk in silence, faces set in a mask of grim anticipation, already feeling the factory's heat. Others are louder, arguing or laughing with a rough, fleeting energy. You feel the brush of a wool-clad shoulder, the accidental nudge of an elbow. There is no privacy, no bubble of isolation. You're a particle in a stream, your individual motion subsumed by the collective direction. The smell is immediate and complex. The sour tang of unwashed wool, the stale beer smell from a pub's open doorway, the pungent reek of a fishmonger's stall setting up, and underneath it all, the sulphurous breath of the factories ahead, a promise of the day to come. Both streams, the swift current of wheels and the slower, denser flow of feet, are drawn inexorably towards the same ancient fulcrum, London Bridge. From the west, your carriage joins a procession of vehicles, the pace slowing to a dignified walk as you approach the river. From the east, the human river narrows and concentrates, funneling onto the bridge's broad pedestrian walkways. Here, for a few hundred yards, the two bodies of London are forced into a stark, parallel intimacy. On one side, the carriages roll, their occupants glancing out, perhaps, at the grey swell of the Thames below, or pointedly ignoring the tide of humanity on the other side of a low stone barrier. On the other side, the workers press forward, a mass of faded colours and weary faces, their eyes mostly on the backs of those ahead, though some glances, fleeting and unreadable, flick towards the polished carriages. The sounds mix. lights, the rumble of iron-rimmed wheels on stone, the jingle of harnesses, and the deep oceanic murmur of countless footsteps and low voices. The smells collide, the fine leather and perfume from the carriage windows meeting the odour of hard labour and cheap tobacco from the crowd. It is the city's heart, this bridge, but it pumps two different kinds of blood through the same stony arteries. The carriage and the pedestrian share the same structure, are suspended over the same powerful, indifferent river, are headed to their destinations in the same teeming city. Yet the barrier between them, both physical and invisible, is absolute. They cross the water together, this moment of convergence a grand daily illusion of unity. Then, on the southern bank, the streams diverge once more without ceremony. The carriages turn towards the offices and counting houses of the city, its financial temples. The crowd of feet pushes onward, deeper into Bermondsey and Southwark, towards the roaring, steaming temples of industry. The contact is broken. The blood separates again, one kind to command, the other to power the engines of that command. The bridge remains, a silent witness to the daily peaceful segregation that keeps the Empire's heart beating. The destination is a room dedicated solely to the act of beginning the day, the dining room. Its door is opened for you, and the scene within is a still life of assured abundance. The table, a vast expanse of polished mahogany, reflects the soft light from the window and the brighter glow of the spirit lamps keeping various covered dishes warm. The air is a warm tapestry of distinct savoury threads. The smoky, oily perfume of kippers grilled until their skin blisters, the salty, fatty crispness of back bacon, the rich, comforting smell of eggs fried in butter. There is the sweeter, simpler scent of toasted bread, and underneath it all, the dark, aromatic breath of strong China tea steeping in a silver pot. You take your place. The chair is heavy, solid. Before you, the landscape of your plate is arranged with precision. A piece of fine white porcelain, its edges traced with a band of cobalt blue. To its side, silver cutlery rests on the linen cloth, cool and weighty in the hand, their surfaces buffed to a soft gleam that holds the light rather than throws it back. The rituals here are silent, performed by unseen hands. A servant lifts a dome from a dish revealing the glistening fish. Another offers a basket lined with a napkin, from which you select a slice of toast that crackles faintly at the touch. Butter, pale and creamy, yields under the knife. Marmalade, dark and bitter-sweet, sits in a cut glass dish. The first bite is an experience of texture and temperature as much as taste. The flaky flesh of the fish, the crunch of the toast, the unctuous give of the butter. The tea is poured, its colour a deep amber, its heat a clean counterpoint to the rich food. It is served with milk and sugar, but these are additions, not necessities. This is not eating out of hunger, but eating as a declaration. Each item on the table speaks of a supply chain that spans the globe. The tea from India, the sugar from the West Indies, the china from Staffordshire. You're consuming the empire quite literally, and it is delicious. Conversation here is low, measured, an accompaniment to the meal, not its focus. The newspaper, ironed to remove the damp, lies folded beside your setting. It provides the topics. A comment on the dispatches from the continent, a dry observation on a parliamentary speech, a mention of a soirée to be attended that evening. Plans are discussed, not made. The talk is of influence and information, of maintaining the network of social and economic bonds that this very breakfast symbolises. The room is a sanctuary of order. The only sounds are the delicate clink of silver on china, the soft rustle of the newspaper, the murmur of voices. Time feels suspended, generous. This hour is a buffer, a gentle launch into the demands of capital and society. Elsewhere, the day offers no such sanctuary, no such launch. There is no dedicated room, no polished table. For your other self, breakfast is not a destination, but a momentary pause in the relentless trajectory towards the factory gate. The street itself becomes the dining room, its tables the wooden planks of a costermonger's barrow or the sooty ledge of a bridge wall. The air here is not woven with food smells, but assaulted by them. The pungent, greasy odour of frying pudding that hangs in a cloud around a stall. The sharp, almost chemical scent of cheap coffee adulterated with chicory and burnt grain, boiling in a vast blackened tin. You join a short, silent queue, your hand already clutching a single worn penny pulled from the depths of a pocket. The transaction is wordless. The penny is exchanged for a thick, handleless mug of a liquid so dark it is nearly black, and a slab of spotted dick or a pie of indeterminate content, its crust shiny with fat. There is no plate. The food is handed to you wrapped in a scrap of old paper that immediately grows translucent with grease. The coffee is scalding, bitter, its primary virtue being its heat, which sears a path down your throat and sits heavily in your stomach. The pudding is dense, doughy, sweet with cheap molasses and studded with hard, dry currants. You eat standing, your back to the flow of traffic, taking quick, careful bites between blows on the steaming liquid in the mug, or perhaps you have brought your own ration from home. In the dim, cavernous space of the factory yard, leaning against a cold brick wall, you unwrap a cloth to reveal a wedge of stale bread, maybe a small piece of hard cheese. You eat this slowly, methodically, making it last, while around you others do the same. There is no conversation here either, but the silence is of a different quality, not peaceful but drained, conserving energy. The food has no ceremony, no variety, no particular taste beyond that of flour, salt and endurance. It is not enjoyed, it is deployed. Its purpose is purely physical, to convert starch and fat into strength, to fill the hollow space that will yawn wider with every hour of labour ahead. The pleasure, if it exists, is negative, the temporary cessation of gnawing emptiness. The contrast is not merely in the food, but in the relationship to time. In the West, breakfast is an island of own time, a space for the mind to engage with the world before the body must. In the East, it is a theft from time owed to the machine, a furtive refuelling performed in the margins of the working day. One table sustains a way of life, a culture of manners and conversation. The other stall or factory corner merely sustains a body, keeping the engine of labour fueled and functional. Both are essential to the city's metabolism, but they acknowledge different kinds of hunger and satisfy them in languages so distinct they might as well be describing different elements altogether. One is an anchor, the other is just ballast. Your day's true labour begins not with a strain of muscle, but with a settling of the mind into channels of calculated thought. The carriage deposits you before a building of solid, respectable stone, perhaps in the warren of lanes around the Bank of England, or in a quieter street off the Strand. The architecture speaks of permanence and discretion. You climb a short flight of steps, push open a heavy door of dark oak, and enter a different kind of atmosphere. The noise of the street, the cries, the wheels, the general din is cut off with a final muffled thud of the door closing behind you. It is replaced by a profound carpeted quiet, broken only by the distant rhythmic tick of a long case clock in the hallway. The room you enter is an exercise in controlled substance. The walls are panelled in rich dark mahogany, the grain of the wood like frozen smoke. A large desk, its surface a sea of polished leather, dominates the space. Upon it, order reigns, a brass inkstand, its wells filled with black and red ink, a row of lead pencils sharpened to fine points, a letter knife of polished steel. The air carries a library scent, old paper, leather bindings, and the faint, clean aroma of furniture polish. There is a fire in the grate, but it burns low and efficiently, more for the suggestion of comfort than for needed warmth. The light from the window, filtered through slatted blinds, falls in precise bright bars across the desktop. You sit, the chair groaning softly under your weight, a sound of sturdy craftsmanship. Your hands move almost of their own accord, sorting through the morning's correspondence. The letters are opened with a sharp blade, the crack of the sealing wax a small, satisfying punctuation. The paper crackles as you unfold it. Here is the raw material of your work, figures from a plantation in Jamaica, a shipping manifest from Calcutta, a query from a wool broker in Sydney, a legal document pertaining to a rail line in the Midlands. The words are dry, factual, yet each one vibrates with implication, with risk and potential gain. Your pen moves across your own paper, its nib scratching steadily, a dry whisper that is the primary sound of your world. You're not moving anything physical. You're moving value, responsibility, futures. You trace lines of credit across oceans, assess percentages of profit, draft instructions that will take weeks to reach their destination, but whose consequences will echo for years. The empire is not just territories on a map. It is this, a vast, invisible nervous system of promises and accounts. And you sit at a quiet node, reading its signals and sending your own. The tools are extensions of your intent. The ledger before you is massive, its pages thick and creamy, ruled in red and blue. Columns of figures march down the pages, each entry made with a careful, copperplate hand. A mistake is not merely erased, it is struck through with a single neat line and the correction written above, creating a permanent record of the error and its remedy. There is a moral geometry to this work. Balance must be achieved. Debits and credits must reconcile with the certainty of a mathematical truth. The chaos of the world, the storms that sink ships, the rebellions that disrupt harvests, the vagaries of human nature, must all be rendered into these orderly rows and summed into a final, authoritative number at the bottom of the page. It is an act of profound faith, this belief that the world can be contained and understood through ink and arithmetic. The morning passes in this quiet, intense focus. Occasionally a clerk enters silently, places a new batch of papers on the desk, or retrieves a signed document. Conversations, when they occur, are brief and specific. A low-voiced query about a clause in a contract, a clarification on a shipment's insurance. There is no raised voice, no visible sweat. The tension here is intellectual, a tight wire of concentration strung across the room. You're managing not machines, but fates. The well-being of distant enterprises, the dividends of anxious shareholders, the livelihoods of thousands you will never see, all pass through your hands in the form of these crisp white sheets. The weight is immense, but it is a weight borne by the mind, leaving the body untouched, clean, and still relatively fresh in its tailored cage of woolen linen. As the clock's hands approach a certain hour, the nature of the day's work subtly shifts. The meticulous accounting, the correspondence, the analysis, these do not cease, but they are now understood to be the foundation for a different kind of transaction. The bell of a nearby church tolls the hour, a sound that penetrates even the quiet of the office. It is a signal. You carefully cap the inkwell, slide the ledger into its designated drawer, and straighten the papers on your desk into a perfect rectangular alignment. The physical order of the space mirrors the mental order you strive to impose on the world. You rise, your muscles protesting only slightly from the long stillness, and retrieve your hat and coat from the stand. The work of the pen is temporarily suspended. Now begins the work of the handshake, the conversation, the measured revelation and careful listening. You step back out into the daylight, your eyes adjusting from the lamplit gloom of the office to the grey glare of the London noon. The next stage of maintaining the Empire's capital does not happen at the desk. It happens over a meal, in a room filled with the low hum of congenial power, where the true currency is information and the most valuable assets are trust and connection. The summons of the distant whistle becomes, upon crossing the factory threshold, an all-consuming reality. You pass through a high-arched gate of wrought iron, and the world outside, the grey sky, the damp streets, the murmur of the crowd is swallowed whole. It is not just a sound that greets you, but a physical force. The noise is a solid, vibrating wall, a deep, rhythmic asterisk, thump, 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 asterisk, from the massive steam engine in the bowels of the building that you feel in your teeth, your ribs, the soles of your feet. Overlaying this bedrock of sound is a shrieking cacophony, the hiss of steam from overhead pipes, the shriek of metal on metal as looms fly back and forth, the clatter of drive shafts, the whir and slap of leather belts as wide as your torso, snaking and dancing from ceiling to machine in a hypnotic, dangerous ballet. To speak is to shout directly into your neighbour's ear, and even then the words are torn from your lips and shredded by the din. The air is its own kind of oppression. The chill of the morning is gone, replaced by a thick, moist heat radiating from the engine room and from the friction of 1,000 moving parts. It smells of hot oil, of scorched dust, of the peculiar, sweet metallic scent of steam. And then there is the taste of the work itself. If it is a textile mill, the air is a blizzard of fine, fibrous dust. Cotton or wool fibres that coat your tongue, line your throat, and make you cough up grey phlegm. In a metalworks, it is the taste of coke fumes and iron filings, a gritty mineral tang that sticks to the back of your mouth. The light is a murky twilight, filtering through high grime-caked windows, supplemented by the faint guttering glow of gas jets that paint moving shadows on the cavernous walls. You take your place, not at a desk but at a machine. It might be a spinning mule, its carriage moving back and forth with a relentless grinding patience, or a power loom, a monstrous thing of wood and iron that clatters and bucks as it weaves cloth with a speed no human hand could match. Your body now becomes an annex to the machine. Your task is not to think but to react, to repeat, to attend. For 12, 14, sometimes 16 hours, your world narrows to a few square feet. Your hands perform the same series of motions, tying a broken thread on a spinning frame, feeding carded wool into a hungry maw, guiding a piece of metal under a stamping press, watching for flaws in a river of cloth. The motions are small, precise, and ceaseless. There is no variety, only the infinite replication of a single mechanical gesture. To look up from your station is to risk a tangle, a flaw, a moment's inattention that could mean damaged material, a furious overlooker, or worse, a mangled limb caught in the unthinking gears. You're not alone in this submission. All around you, other bodies are locked in the same rhythm. Children, small and nimble, crawl beneath the working machines to sweep up lint or oil the lower mechanisms, their faces pale in the gloom. Women, their skirts tied back, their hair tightly covered, work the looms or the spinning frames with a desperate, weary speed. The overlooker moves through the aisles, a watchful, silent figure with a clipboard, his eyes missing nothing. Lingering touch, a slowed pace, a whispered conversation, all are noted. The discipline is not of the mind, but of the body and the clock. The only sanctioned pauses are for the hurried, tasteless meals, eaten perched on a crate or leaning against a wall, the food gritty with the airborne dust of the trade. The fatigue is not the pleasant weariness of mental exertion. It is a deep, systemic draining. It settles first in the feet, which ache from standing on hard stone for every one of those 1,000 minutes. Then it climbs into the legs, a dull, heavy pain. The back stiffens from constant hunching or reaching. The eyes strain in the poor light, watering from the dust or the fumes. The noise becomes a kind of silence, a constant pressure on the skull that makes thought impossible, leaving only a numb, automatic awareness of the task. The mind retreats, leaving the body to perform its repetitive dance under the watchful eye of the overlooker and the relentless dictate of the steam engine's heartbeat. And the danger is always present, a silent partner to the fatigue. It is in the unguarded drive shaft that could snag a sleeve and pull an arm from its socket. It is in the leather belt that could snap with the crack of a cannon and lash across the room. It is in the press that comes down with tons of force, waiting for a hand placed a fraction of an inch out of position. It is in the air itself, thick with combustible dust that could turn the entire building into an inferno with a single spark. You hear stories, see the empty space where a worker once stood. Notice the man with the missing fingers who now sweeps the floors. The fear is there, but it is buried under the heavier weight of necessity. You cannot afford to be afraid. You can only afford to be careful, and even that is not always enough. Beyond the walls of this particular mill or forge, the same gospel of sweat and repetition is preached in 1,000 different accents. On the docks, your other self might be a lumpen, moving not among machines, but among mountains of cargo. The smell here is of tidal mud, rotting hemp, and exotic spices leaking from torn sacks. The work is pure, brute translocation. A sack of grain weighing 200 pounds is hoisted onto your back by a partner, and you walk the plank from ship to wharf, your spine compressing with each step, the world reduced to the sweat in your eyes and the burn in your thighs. The rhythm is set by the foreman's shout, not the engine's thump, but the demand on the body is just as absolute, the margin for error just as slim. A misstep on a wet plank means a plunge into the icy, filthy Thames. A slipping load can crush a leg in an instant, or perhaps the work is quieter but no less confining. In a garret room in Spitalfields, you sit with a dozen other women, your world a small square of cloth and a needle that flashes in the dim light from the window. This is a different kind of factory, one without a central engine, but the rhythm is imposed just the same, by the pile of unfinished trousers, by the meagre piece rate pay, by the sharp-eyed mistress who measures your output. Your back aches from hunching, your eyes sting from focusing on fine stitches for 14 hours, your fingers grow numb and calloused. The air is close, still, thick with the smell of cheap fabric and human breath. The danger here is slower, failing eyesight, a consumptive cough from the perpetual indoor damp, the slow starvation of wages that never quite meet the rent. It is a silent, draining grind, where the only sound is the whisper of thread through cloth and the occasional sigh. At a building site for a new railway viaduct or a grand commercial palace, the labour is a hybrid of the old world and the new. The air rings with the strike of hammers on stone, the rasp of handsaws, the foreman's cries. You haul bricks in a hod, mix mortar in a great trough, scramble up scaffolding with a load on your shoulder that sways terrifyingly in the wind. Here, the danger is spectacular. A fall from a great height, a collapsing trench, a runaway cart of rubble. The body is pushed to its absolute limit of strength and endurance, building the monumental infrastructure of the age, one back-breaking load at a time. The form of the labour varies, the roar of the mill, the strain of the dock, the silent stitch of the needle, the heave of the brick, but its essence remains constant. It is the conversion of human life, measured in time and physical effort, into a product, a service, a component of the empire's wealth. It is work that asks nothing of the mind and everything of the body. It is work that leaves its mark not on paper, but on the lungs, the spine, the hands, and the spirit. While the city's brain plans and calculates in quiet carpeted rooms, its muscles and sinews are here, in these temples of noise and effort, burning themselves out to power a progress from which they will see little reward. The afternoon presents not a halt, but a shift in the city's energy. In the west, the work of ledgers and correspondence finds its natural counterpoint in the work of selection and acquisition. The social lunch concludes, and the streets become a theatre of leisure with a purpose. You might find yourself drawn towards the grand new emporiums, palaces of consumption like Whiteley's in Bayswater. Stepping inside is to enter a climate of its own, warmer than the outside air and perfumed with the scent of new fabric, polished wood, and the faint sweet aroma of the confectionery department. Light floods from high windows and glittering gaseliers, illuminating a staggering panorama of choice. Counters groan under stacks of Indian shawls and bolts of French silk. Glass cases display intricate silverware, porcelain from Dresden, toys from Nuremberg. Assistants move with deferential grace, presenting items as if unveiling treasures. Here, shopping is not a necessity but an exploration, an education in taste. You handle objects, assessing weight and texture not for utility, but for the pleasure of possession they promise. The act is slow, considered. You're not buying a thing, you're curating your own world, one purchase at a time. The abundance is almost overwhelming, a tangible manifestation of global trade routes all culminating here on a polished mahogany counter before you. Or perhaps the afternoon calls for a different kind of consumption, that of curated experience. You might visit the lingering spectacles of the Great Exhibition, housed now in Sydenham. Here, the empire and the world are organised into digestible marvels, replicas of ancient temples, machines that demonstrate scientific principles, dioramas of exotic landscapes. You walk through these exhibits with a quiet awe, a sense of owning through understanding. It is leisure that flatters the intellect, reinforcing the narrative of progress and British mastery. Later, a stroll through Hyde Park offers a more subdued pleasure. The chaos of the city is held at bay by iron railings and vast expanses of grass. The air here is clearer, carrying the damp green smell of earth and leaves. You follow neat gravel paths, nodding to other well-dressed strollers, observing the carriages roll by on Rotten Row. This is nature, but nature perfected, trimmed and made safe for polite society. It is a space for quiet conversation, for private thought amidst the public domain, a testament to the luxury of unproductive time. Meanwhile, in the East the concept of an afternoon is not a segment of the day, but a fleeting anomaly in the continuum of labour. The factory bell or the foreman's shout grants a respite, but it is measured in minutes, not hours. There is no grand emporium to browse, no curated park to wander. The body, however, makes its own demands. The need is not for diversion, but for a momentary surrender. For many, the destination is the public house. You push open a door into a room thick with the smell of sawdust, spilled beer, cheap tobacco, and unwashed bodies. The light is dim, the windows grimy. Conversation here is a low, tired rumble. You place a penny on the damp wood of the bar and receive a glass of gin, clear and sharp as a knife. You drink it quickly, not for the taste, which is medicinal and harsh, but for the swift spreading warmth that follows, a brief internal fire that loosens the knot between your shoulders and blurs the hard edges of the day for a precious quarter hour. It is not joy, but a chemical respite. Others, with even less coin, might simply find a doorstep in a rare sliver of sunlight, leaning against the brickwork and closing their eyes. The luxury here is not choice, but stillness. To sit, to feel the weak sun on your face, to not move for 10 minutes, this is the pinnacle of afternoon pleasure. The mind does not wander to far-off lands or elegant goods. It focuses on the simple, profound absence of immediate demand. It is a pause so fragile it feels stolen and is all the more cherished for it. Between these two worlds, on the common ground of the street itself, the true democratic theatre of London plays out endlessly. Here, the narratives of both bodies intersect in a cacophony of survival and spectacle. You encounter the street performer, a man with a tired monkey on a leash, turning somersaults on the cobbles while his hat lies empty on the ground, hoping for the stray farthing of pity or amusement. The beggar, a fixture on a certain corner, repeats a silent, well-rehearsed plea with his eyes, his very posture a monument to want. The itinerant salesman, his tray hung from his neck, proclaims the virtues of boot-blacking or sewing needles in a rapid musical patter, a one-man chorus of commerce. The evangelical preacher stands on a crate, his face flushed with fervour, hurling promises of damnation and salvation at a stream of indifferent faces, his words battling the din of the traffic. This street is a marketplace of everything: goods, talents, desperation, faith. A pieman sells his wares from a portable oven. A girl offers bunches of wilted watercress. A blind man plays a sorrowful tune on a fiddle. A pickpocket moves through the crowd with the gentle probing touch of a ghost. It is a space of constant negotiation and fleeting connection. The gentleman from the West might drop a coin in a hat. A transaction of conscience. The worker from the East might share a grim joke with the costermonger. Everyone is both audience and performer. The street accepts all roles and grants no one a permanent stage. It is the city's true commons, a brutal, vibrant, and utterly captivating pageant where the only price of admission is to be present, and the only consistent theme is the relentless, churning effort to secure the next meal, the next coin, the next breath. It reminds you, no matter which body you inhabit, that London's never still, never satisfied, and that its lifeblood is this very motion, this endless ragged flow of humanity seeking its narrow path through the afternoon. As the afternoon light begins to slant, lengthening shadows in the alleys and lending a gilded edge to the grand facades of the west, another layer of the city's reality asserts itself, one that flows just beneath the surface of commerce and respite. It is the constant, quiet hum of transgression and peril. Your awareness of it sharpens, a subconscious adjustment to the rhythm of survival. In the crowded thoroughfares, the press of bodies is not just an inconvenience. It is a landscape of opportunity for a different kind of trade. The pickpocket works with a delicate, rehearsed precision, his fingers lighter than a moth's wing as they dip into a coat pocket, seeking the weight of a watch or the slight crinkle of a banknote. The act is a performance of misdirection, a touch so fleeting the victim often attributes the brush to the general jostle of the crowd. In quieter lanes, the cracksman surveys a window latch, his tools hidden in his sleeves. The threat is rarely violent, but it is omnipresent, a tax on carelessness levied by the desperate upon the comfortable and the poor alike. The embodiment of order against this subtle chaos is the policemen, the peelers, in their distinctive blue uniform and tall hat. You see them at regular points, a solid, watchful presence. Their patrol is a slow, deliberate walk, their eyes scanning the flow of people. But their authority feels specific, grounded in the protection of visible property and the maintenance of public order. They're a deterrent to the brawler, the drunkard, the blatant thief. The more insidious dangers, the slow poison of bad water, the exploitation by a slum landlord, the silent hunger of a child, these lie largely outside their sphere. The law in its daily application is a fence around possession, not a shield for well-being. For yourself in the East, the policeman is often not a protector but an enforcer, a representative of a system that seems to punish survival crimes. Drunkenness, vagrancy, petty theft, with a severity it rarely applies to the silent legal ravages of the factory or the rented room. Justice, like so much else, is a commodity of uneven distribution. A more profound and intimate danger than crime, however, hangs in the very air you breathe and lies in the water you might dare to drink. The memory of the great stink of just 2 years past is fresh. A summer when the Thames, choked with the effluent of the world's largest city, became a fermenting, putrid open sewer whose vapours were said to have driven Parliament to drape their windows in lime-soaked curtains. The grand new sewer lines are being laid, a Herculean effort beneath the streets, but their completion is a future promise. Today, the river still carries a potent organic stench on warm days, a reminder of the filth that is merely being diverted, not vanquished. In the warren of courts and alleys, the threat is more direct. Open drains trickle with unspeakable contents. Pumps draw water from wells perilously close to cesspits. The smell in these places is a complex, oppressive mixture of rot, ammonia, and decay. It is the smell of cholera, of typhoid, of 100 fevers that have no name but carry the same finality. When illness strikes here, it does so with the swiftness of a falling hammer. The medical remedies available are a frantic mix of folk wisdom and desperate commerce. You might visit the apothecary, whose shelves are lined with colourful bottles containing tinctures of opium, powders of dubious origin, and syrups laced with alcohol. Or you might rely on the advice of a neighbour, a poultice of boiled herbs, a charm bought from a wise woman. The line between medicine and superstition is thin and often crossed. Doctors, if they come at all, are expensive and may prescribe bleedings or purgatives that weaken more than they heal. Disease is not just a physical affliction, it is an economic cataclysm. A week's lost work means a week without pay, which means hunger, which means eviction. The body's fragility is the greatest threat of all, a personal vulnerability that no policeman's patrol can ever guard against. And through this landscape of physical and moral hazard, Information travels like a second chaotic nervous system. The official word comes slowly, through the costly Times or the posted pronouncements of authority. For the vast majority, the news is carried on the quicker, more adaptable currents of rumour and cheap print. A boy shouts the headlines of a penny paper, his voice cracking with sensational tales of scandal, murder, or foreign war. The words are often more thrilling than accurate, designed to sell, not to inform. News passes from mouth to mouth in pub, marketplace, and factory yard, transforming with each telling. A diplomatic incident becomes an imminent invasion. A factory fire becomes a signal for a workers' uprising. The speed of this street telegraph is astonishing, but its reliability is non-existent. It breeds a pervasive sense of knowing and yet not knowing, a state of permanent, low-grade anxiety where fact and speculation are woven into a single compelling narrative. In the absence of certainty, the most lurid story often gains the widest purchase, shaping fears and opinions with a power that careful, documented reporting cannot match. In this way, the city's mind is fed not on truth, but on a potent, intoxicating broth of fact, fear, and fantasy, a perfect reflection of the unstable, vibrant, and perilous world its bodies must navigate as the day moves relentlessly towards its close. The dusk in the west is not a fading, but a drawing in. As the last grey light retreats from the squares and crescents, the house begins to glow from within, each window a beacon of gaslit yellow against the deepening blue. You return to it, the chill of the evening air at your back, stepping across the threshold into an atmosphere of curated warmth. The hallway, with its familiar scent of beeswax and dried flowers, feels like a silent exhale. The door closes, and the city's chaos, the rattle of late carriages, the calls of newsboys, the general din, is reduced to a distant, muffled rumble, as if you've stepped inside a well-crafted box that perfectly insulates its contents from the world. The heart of this inner world is the drawing room. Here the gas lamps are lit, their mantles hissing softly behind frosted glass shades, casting an even, gentle light that flatters the complex patterns of the wallpaper and the rich colours of the turkey carpet. A fire crackles in the marble grate, its light dancing on the polished brass of the fender. This is the stage for the evening's domestic performance. Your spouse is perhaps arranging flowers from the garden in a cut glass vase, or already seated with a piece of needlework. The children, changed from their day clothes, are on the rug, engaged in a quiet game with wooden blocks or a lead soldier. A daughter might be practicing a simple piece on the pianoforte, the notes hesitant but sweet, threading through the quiet conversation. There is a palpable sense of relief, of arms being laid down. The public face of the day is shed here, replaced by the softer, more intimate roles of parent, partner, child. This is the cult of the domestic hearth, a powerful middle-class ideal, the home as a fortress against moral and social chaos, a sanctuary of affection, education, and refined taste. The very ordinariness of the scene, the rustle of a newspaper, the child's question, the soft comment on the day, is its triumph. It proclaims stability, comfort, and a moral order centred on family, a quiet victory in a turbulent age. This careful performance extends to the most ritualised event of the evening, dinner. The family processes into the dining room, a space of even greater formality. The table is a long lake of white damask, upon which islands of silver and crystal are arranged with geometric precision. The light from the central gaselier sparkles in the cut glass goblets and reflects off the polished surfaces of a dozen different forks, knives and spoons, each with a prescribed purpose. The air holds the subtle, layered aromas of the coming meal, a clear soup, a roast of beef, a boiled fowl, the earthy sweetness of roasted root vegetables. Servants move with silent efficiency, placing dishes, removing covers, pouring wine. Conversation here is governed by an unspoken protocol. Topics are gentle, avoiding the crassness of business or the ugliness of the news. It is a display of cultivated manners, where the correct use of utensils, the moderation of appetite, the ability to make light, agreeable talk are all performances of one's place in the civilized world. Each bite, each sip, each murmured remark is a stitch in the fabric of social identity. The meal is long, deliberate, a nightly reaffirmation of the codes that separate this world from the hurried, unmannered scramble beyond the front door. Beneath this polished surface, in the depths of the house, another world pulses with a different kind of labour. The warmth of the drawing room fire is born in the heat of the kitchen range, a monstrous beast of black iron that radiates a blistering dryness. Here the scents are not layered but overpowering the rich fat of the roasting meat, the steam of boiling potatoes, the sharp tang of vinegar in a sauce. The cook, her face flushed, commands this domain, her movements quick and sure as she plates the very dishes that will appear moments later, as if by magic in the dining room. The footmen and maids, having shed their public uniforms for simpler working clothes, move with a hurried quietness, their backs and feet aching from a day that began hours before the family stirred and will end long after they retire. Their dinner, taken in the stark, functional space of the servants' hall, is a plainer version of the feast above, a stew, bread, cheese. Their conversation is low, practical, freighted with the minor dramas and alliances of their enclosed world. Their rooms, tucked under the eaves or in the semi-basement, are small, cold, and furnished with stark simplicity. The comfort and ceremony of the family life above are entirely dependent on this hidden engine of toil. The crisp linen, the shining silver, the perfectly timed courses, all are the product of skill, timing, and physical effort that remains meticulously invisible. As you sit in the gaslit glow of the dining room, the gentle clink of crystal in your hand, the world below is already clearing, scrubbing, and preparing for the same ritual tomorrow. The fortress of domestic bliss is built on foundations of silent, perpetual service, a truth acknowledged only in the household ledgers and the quiet weariness in a maid's eyes as she finally blows out her candle in the distant attic, the house now still and dark around her. The return to the eastern quarters as dusk thickens feels less like a homecoming and more like a re-entry into a shared capsule of fatigue. The walk back is slower than the morning's march, bodies moving with a spent, heavy deliberation. You turn from the broader thoroughfare into the familiar canyon of your street, now darker, the air cooling and trapping the day's accumulated smells, the sour tang from the breweries, the ghost of fish from the market stalls now shuttered, the ever-present dust and smoke. Your doorway offers no transition. You step from the public gloom into a private, compressed dimness. The stairwell is black as pitch, familiar only to your feet and fingertips, which trace the walls' contours of crumbling plaster and slick damp. The room you enter is exactly as you left it, yet somehow more crowded by the absence of daylight. The air, undisturbed for hours, is close and thick, holding the memory of slept-in bedding and cold ashes. There is no drawing room, no hearth awaiting a match. There is only this one multi-purpose cell. The first task is light, a precious commodity. A tallow candle is lit, its flame small and greasy, throwing a restless, sooty shadow that makes the walls seem to lean in. Its smell, fatty and acrid, immediately dominates the space. Then, warmth. If you are fortunate, there are a few coals or bits of wood to coax a meagre fire in the small grate, not for ambience, but for the practical magic of heat to transform the evening's sustenance. A pot is retrieved, filled with water from the shared cistern on the landing. Into it goes a handful of chopped potatoes, maybe a scrap of bacon or a bone saved from Sunday, a wrinkled carrot, a fistful of barley. It is not a recipe, but an equation of what is available. The stew simmers for an hour, its steam adding to the dampness of the room, its smell a bland, starchy promise that slowly overpowers the candle smoke. For some, the room's oppressive intimacy is too much to bear immediately. The body may turn instead towards the public house, not for a quick afternoon respite, but for a longer, more determined immersion. The crowd inside is different now, denser, louder. The air is a blue haze of tobacco smoke. The warmth is bodily, generated by the press of people. Here, for the price of a penny for a pot of beer, you can buy not just drink, but space. Not physical space, but mental space. The noise of the crowd becomes a wall against private thought. The conversations around you, boisterous or maudlin, are a distraction from the silent calculus of rent and hunger waiting at home. It is a collective forgetting, a place where the edges of the day are blurred by alcohol and companionship born of shared circumstance. You may sit for an hour, nursing your drink, letting the sound and the warmth wash over you, postponing the return to the cold room and its responsibilities. Whether at home or returning later from the pub, the family gathers around the single pot or the loaf of bread. There is no ceremony, only distribution. Bowls are filled. The food is hot, filling, monotonous. It addresses a need, not a palate. The conversation around this meal is sparse, often eclipsed by a deep, weary silence. The exhaustion of the day is a physical presence at the table. It manifests in short tempers, in a father's vacant stare, in a mother's snapped instruction to a fidgeting child. The children themselves are not insulated from the day's residue. An older boy might still be picking oakum in the corner, his fingers sore and black with tar, adding a few pence to the family's coffers. A girl might be minding a younger sibling, her own childhood subsumed by duty. The pressure is constant, a low-grade fever of anxiety. Illness is a frequent guest, announced by a cough from the corner palate or a child's flushed face. Medicine is a luxury. Recovery is a matter of stubborn constitution and time, both of which are in short supply. The room feels perpetually on the brink of cold, of hunger, of sickness, of despair. The love that exists here is real, but it is often expressed through shared endurance, through the simple, profound fact of remaining together against a world that seems designed to splinter such bonds. It is from this pressure cooker of want that the need for escape becomes a physical force. And so, the evening might offer one final, desperate migration, not towards rest, but towards a different kind of exhaustion. For a single penny, you can gain entry to a penny gaff. This is not a theatre as the West knows it, but a converted shop or a large room, packed with benches, the air reeking of unwashed bodies and orange peel. The stage is a rough platform. The entertainment is loud, garish, violent, or ludicrously sentimental. Melodramas feature moustache-twirling villains and shrieking heroines. Comedians trade in broad physical slapstick. There are singers of bawdy songs, dancers of questionable skill. The audience is not a passive observer. It is a participant, heckling, cheering, weeping openly. For an hour you are transported. The grinding reality of your life is replaced by a world of clear moral choices, exaggerated emotion, and most importantly, resolution. The villain is always punished. The lovers are always united. It is a fantasy, cheap and raw, but its power is immense. It offers catharsis, a purging of the day's accumulated helplessness through the tears and laughter of a collective dream. Or perhaps the entertainment is even simpler, found for free on the street corner. A man with a concertina plays a familiar tune, and a small crowd gathers, some joining in with rough, untrained voices. An old sailor, for the price of a shared bottle of beer, might recount a tale of sea monsters and tropical islands, his words painting a temporary window in the sooty brick wall of the alley. These moments of shared song or story are fleeting, but they are glue. They reinforce a sense of community, of a shared identity forged in hardship. They are proof that the spirit, however battered, can still seek light, however crude its form. They are the final stubborn assertion of humanity before sleep claims you, a reminder that the need for joy, for narrative, for connection is as fundamental as the need for bread, and in the face of relentless want, it finds a way, however small, to be fed. The night that settles over the western squares is a soft, deliberate construct. Inside your bedroom, the final act of the day is performed with quiet ritual. The gas mantle is turned low, its light shrinking to a blue pearl before vanishing with a soft pop. In the sudden deeper dark, your hands find the heavy velvet curtains, their fabric dense and cold, and draw them across the window with a final swishing sigh. The action is definitive. It severs the last connection to the outside world. The faint orange glow of the street gas lamps, the occasional clop of a lone hansom, the distant rhythmic call of the watchman. Past 12 o'clock and all's well. All are reduced to the faintest of murmurs, sounds that confirm the safety they cannot disturb. The house around you is a vault of warmth and silence. The embers in the grate sigh as they settle. The floorboards, released from the day's traffic, creak their own slow thermal language. You lie in a cocoon of linen and down, the day's mental ledger closed, its figures filed away. The silence here is not empty. It is a palpable substance, a reward for order, a luxurious nothingness purchased by the day's labours. Sleep comes as a smooth, uninterrupted descent into a private darkness, guarded by walls, curtains, and social contract. Across the river, in the eastern reaches, the night is not a blanket but a transformation. The same darkness falls, but it does not bring a universal stillness. For some, the setting of the sun is a starting pistol. The night shift workers emerge, their faces pale and resigned in the gloom, moving against the tide of their day shift counterparts now stumbling homeward. They are the keepers of the eternal furnace, the tenders of processes that cannot be paused, their lives regulated by a clock out of phase with the sun. Their journey through the midnight streets is a solitary one, through a landscape that has shed its daytime character for something more primal and uncertain. In the pools of shadow between the infrequent gas lamps, a different economy awakens. Figures detach themselves from doorway depths, their movements purposeful. This is the realm of transaction stripped of all pretense. Negotiations are swift, whispered, conducted in the language of quick glances and concealed hands. The trade is in the body's temporary usage, in stolen goods, in forbidden pleasures, in the fragile promises of oblivion sold in small, brown bottles. The police patrols are fewer here, their lanterns carving slow, predictable arcs through the fog. The night people know their rhythms and flow around them like water around a stone. Along the embankments and beneath the arches of bridges, another population settles, the truly dispossessed. They huddle in sacks or ragged coats, seeking the slight warmth of a bakery's outer wall or the shelter of a construction hoarding. Their sleep is fitful, alert to the step of the constable who might move them on, or to the footpad who might rob them of the nothing they possess. For them, the night is not a time for rest, but for exposure. A long cold waiting for a dawn that offers little more than the dusk. And above it all, above the curtained serenity of the west and the furtive commerce of the east, hangs the city's only truly shared possession, the night sky. It is rarely a spectacle of stars. More often, it is a dome of profound blackness, or a ceiling of low, fast-moving cloud lit from beneath by the city's own sulphurous glow. On clearer nights, it reveals itself as a bruised orange-tinted void, its celestial lights dimmed and drowned by the smoke of 1,000,000 hearths and 1,000 furnace chimneys. Look eastward, and you can see them, the great factory stacks, like the pillars of some infernal temple, still belching columns of flame and sparks into the darkness. They pulse with a relentless fiery breath. These are the unsleeping giants, the beating iron hearts of the empire's prosperity. Their light does not illuminate, it smoulders. Their constant roar, felt more than heard at this distance, is the city's true nocturnal rhythm, a reminder that the machine never rests, that consumption and production are endless cycles. The same sky watches over the child in her lace-trimmed crib and the urchin shivering under a cart. The same distant fireglow touches the manicured garden square and the filthy cobbles of the rookery. In this, at least, there is a terrible equality. The magnificent, polluted, star-strangling achievement of London, the engine of the world, casts its shadow and its light upon everyone, generous and indifferent in equal measure, uniting both bodies of the city under a single smoke-stained canopy. In the quiet that follows the last stirred coal or the final guttering of the tallow candle, the mind, released from the immediate demands of the day, begins its own unsupervised work. In the West, lying in the dark, the thoughts are not of survival, but of consequence. A pleasant fatigue of the intellect accompanies the body's rest. There is a solid satisfaction in the day's managed affairs, in the letters sent, the deals brokered, the social ledger balanced. This is the pride of the wheel-turner, feeling the great machine of commerce and empire respond to his touch. The maps in the study downstairs, splashed with imperial pink, are not just paper, they are a reality you help sustain. The world is ordered, and you have your place in its ordering. Yet, into this certainty, like a faint, cold draught under a well-fitted door, seeps another thought. The memory of a beggar's face, unusually vivid. The disturbing statistic read in a quarterly review regarding the health of the manufacturing poor. The unsettling glimpse of a packed, reeking slum court from the window of a speeding train. These are the social problems, a phrase that neatly contains a world of vague unease. They are acknowledged, sometimes discussed with concern over port, yet they feel distant, separate from the causal chain of your own actions. The unease is not guilt, but a faint, persistent dissonance, a suspicion that the magnificent engine you serve might have shadows deep within its works, where the grinding sounds are not of gears, but of bones. You push it aside. It is a problem for philanthropy, for Parliament, for another day. Sleep comes, often dreamless, a peaceful annexation of the hours before the next round of productive thought. In the Eastern Room, where the body's fatigue is so absolute it feels like a form of drowning, the mind's wanderings are of a different nature. There is no pride in the day's output, only a numb accounting of its cost. The thoughts are not of maps, but of labyrinths with no exit. Will the cough in the corner worsen? Is there enough coal to last the week? Will the foreman mark you late if the rain slows the walk tomorrow? The arithmetic of existence is relentless, and sleep is not an escape from it, but a temporary suspension of its active calculation. Beneath this surface anxiety, however, in deeper, less frequented chambers of the spirit, other feelings stir. Sometimes it is a hot, sudden spike of anger, vivid and startling, a memory of the overlooker's sneer, the weight of an unfair deduction from wages, the sight of a well-fed gentleman in a warm carriage. It flashes, bright and dangerous, and then subsides, banked by the crushing logic of consequence. To act on it is to lose everything. More often, the anger is worn down into a hollow, pervasive numbness, a mental callus as thick as the one on your palm. This is the true resignation, a state beyond sadness, where the future is not feared because it is imagined as simply a long repetition of the present. Dreams here, when they come, are seldom of fantasy. They are replays of the day's labour, the endless thread, the falling hammer, the heaving sack, or they are dreams of absence, of silent machines, of full plates, of warmth without effort. They are not escapes but echoes. And as these two streams of consciousness flow in their separate channels, the city itself breathes around them. Listen now, not to a single sound, but to the collective breath. It is there in the silence. It is the memory of sound woven into the night, the pre-dawn wail of the steam whistle, the first foundational note, the clatter of hooves and wheels on granite, building to a daytime crescendo, the shuffling oceanic murmur of countless boots on stone, the market cries, sharp and staccato, the rhythmic, monstrous heartbeat of the factory engines felt through the feet, the preacher's shout, the costermonger's song, the fiddler's tune, the hiss of gas lamps being lit, the knock of the lamplighter's pole, the solemn tolling of church bells measuring out the hours of devotion and rest, the distant lonely call of the river barges, the watchman's cry, affirming an order that feels fragile in the dark. This is the pulse. Not a melody, but a vast rhythmic cacophony, a symphony of effort and existence. It is the sound of the future being forged and the past being consumed. It is the relentless, magnificent, terrifying noise of the present, a noise so constant it becomes the very definition of silence when it finally, impossibly stops. This, then, is the complete heartbeat, a double rhythm, strong and weak, a syncopation of power and endurance. 1860. London. A city of unparalleled might, its skyline pierced by the confident needles of church spires and the brute fists of factory chimneys. Its wealth, tangible in the gleaming shop windows and the solid stone of its institutions, is drawn from every corner of the globe. Its ambition is written in iron and steam, in the railways that stitch the nation together and the ships that dominate the seas. This is the body celebrated in the papers, painted in the grand exhibitions, felt in the pride of its beneficiaries. But the same heartbeat, felt in a different vein, is the tremor of exhaustion in a factory girl's hand. It is the hollow ache in a labourer's stomach. It is the shallow, worried breath of a mother in an airless room. It is the silent, grinding pressure of tomorrow's unchanging demand. The empire of capital and ambition is raised on an empire of fatigue, its foundations not just in earth and stone, but in the accumulated hours of 1,000,000 weary lives, in the quiet desperation of getting by, and the profound resilience of getting through. The grandeur and the squalor are not two cities. They are one organism, the magnificent front and the hidden straining machinery. The light and the shadow are cast by the same fiery sun. To hear one without the other is to misunderstand the music entirely. To feel the triumphant marching rhythm without the deep dragging counterbeat is to miss the true, complex and heavy price of the world that is being made hour by hour, breath by breath on this ordinary night. The heartbeat continues, strong, uneven and alive, carrying its two-bodied city through the darkness and on towards another identically magnificent, identically arduous dawn. The deepest dark, just before the first hint of grey touches the eastern sky over the river, holds a breath. In the west the house is perfectly still, the silence a settled fact. In the east the last of the night's transactions conclude, and the shift workers blink wearily as their replacements arrive. The watchman's final call echoes and fades. For a handful of minutes the city seems to hesitate, suspended between one day and the next. The great machine idles, but this pause is an illusion, a mere intake before the exhalation. Somewhere downriver, a stoker shovels coal into a boiler's hungry mouth. The pressure builds. In 1,000 kitchens, grates are cleared and new fires laid. On 1,000 pillows, eyelids begin to flutter with the approach of light, not yet seen but somehow felt. The cycle does not break. It only bends around the axis of the night. Soon, very soon, the first steam whistle will pierce the quiet. The first hoof will strike stone. The first broom will scratch against pavement. The tide of humanity will reverse its flow, emptying the warrens and filling the thoroughfares once more. The same hands will tie the same cravats, and the same boots will slog through the same mud. The ledger will be reopened, the loom will be rethreaded. The endless negotiation of survival and ambition will resume its ancient familiar terms. The grandeur and the grind are a closed loop. Dawn does not offer an escape, only a continuation. And so we leave it here, in this suspended moment. 1860 London. Capture it. Hold it in your mind. This is not a portrait of the past, but a living blueprint of the modern world in its violent, glorious birth. Every contradiction of our age, the breathtaking power of industry and the human cost it extracts, the global interconnection and the profound local despair, the cult of progress and the weight of tradition, is here, raw and concentrated. This city is the cradle, the noise, the smoke, the ambition, the exhaustion, the polished pride and the grimy struggle. From this crucible, our present was forged. The questions it asked about the price of power and the meaning of community have not been answered. They have only grown larger, echoing down the decades to our own time. Your day within its two bodies is complete. The final echoes of its heartbeat fade. Now, gently, let your attention return to the light and space of your own world. Feel the quiet difference. We have walked these streets not as ghosts, but as temporary inhabitants, and the experience leaves its mark. What stayed with you? Was it the weight of the frock coat, or the ache in the mill worker's spine? The taste of China tea, or the bitterness of penny coffee? The sanctity of the drawing room, or the desperate camaraderie of the penny gaff? Share it below. Tell me which moment, which sensation, which life brushed closest to your own. And if you could step into another day, into another heartbeat of history, where and when would you go? Your journey through this ordinary day is over, but the past holds countless others, each waiting to be lived, each with its own rhythm, its own light, its own weight. Thank you for listening. Thank you for walking. The dawn is coming.